Prince Harry has just dropped a media bomb right into the emotional hospital ward of the royal family. At a time when King Charles is quietly battling illness and the palace is desperately trying to project an image of fragile unity, Harry chose the exact moment to launch an interview that felt less like dialogue and more like detonation. With a calm face and a steady voice, he declared his conscience completely clean, insisted he had no regrets about Spare Oprah Netflix or even his courtroom battles, and with almost casual indifference said he would do it all over again. If reconciliation were a bridge, Harry set it on fire while smiling across the flames. The line that set courtiers' teeth on edge was his sermon-like statement, "There can be no reconciliation without truth." To Harry, it might sound noble, but inside the palace walls it was heard as nothing short of an open accusation. Truth in his framing means the monarchy must first admit guilt, wear sackcloth and bow before the world, before he would even consider a handshake. It's a demand disguised as a principle, and everyone knows the Windsors are allergic to both public apology and public humiliation. Observers noted the chilling timing. Only days ago, Harry had briefly reconnected with his father, a meeting carefully staged as a symbol of fragile truce. Yet before that olive branch even had a chance to sprout, Harry stomped on it in front of millions. The palace, already anxious about Charles's health, received his words like a kick to the ribs. In the court of public opinion, it looked almost cruel, like a son peering into his father's hospital room, only to announce he still has more artillery ready to fire. Commentators couldn't resist a darker metaphor. Harry has turned into a kind of guerrilla fighter hiding in plain sight, waiting for the monarchy to open its gates just a crack, then tossing in another verbal grenade. Every gesture toward reconciliation is followed by another blast. Every flicker of goodwill is extinguished under the smoke of his interviews. And the result, public sympathy that might have tilted toward a son struggling with trauma, is now reframed as a prince staging a performance of righteous defiance at the very moment his father needs quiet, not chaos. The crowd isn't applauding his courage anymore. They're wincing at his timing. But the truth does not stop there. While Harry might have hoped his interview would be overshadowed by his humanitarian trip to Ukraine fate, or perhaps his own PR instincts had other plans. The images were everywhere. Harry, on a slow train. Harry leaning on a walking stick. Harry laying a solemn wreath at a memorial. They were meant to paint him as a statesman in exile, a soldier turned savior, a man with purpose beyond palace politics. And yet, instead of dominating headlines for charity, the photos ricocheted back into the echo chamber of royal drama. What should have been a moment of dignity ended up looking suspiciously like staging. To critics, it felt less like a mission of compassion and more like a carefully scripted Netflix episode, Ukraine, the royal side story. Each frame carried an air of performance, as if the solemnity was tailored to Instagram algorithms rather than to history itself. The palace, of course, seized on the irony. While the king quietly faced treatment, his youngest son was busy curating optics halfway across Europe. And then there was Meghan, or rather, the absence of Meghan. Once the fiery co-star of this saga, she has now been reduced to a cameo role, slipping in only with a single line. Telling the truth is an effective way of living. Oh, it might have been intended as support, but the effect was the opposite. Her vanishing presence only sharpened the focus on Harry himself, as if he were auditioning for the role of lone moral crusader. Even his defenders struggled to explain why she had suddenly become a background character in a drama she helped ignite. For many, the Ukraine trip became a paradox. On one hand, Harry stood in solidarity with a nation under siege, a gesture that carried undeniable weight. On the other, the shadow of his family feud made every bow and every photograph feel like another subplot in his endless soap opera. Instead of elevating him above the noise, the journey reminded the world that Harry can never quite escape the gravitational pull of royal scandal. It was supposed to be a PR coup, a noble detour away from palace wars. Instead, it became a reminder that wherever Harry goes, the monarchy follows like a ghost hovering in the background, haunting every frame and twisting every message back into the story of a family feud that refuses to die. Another layer of the story has just been pulled back. If Harry's photo ops in Ukraine looked like stagecraft, his own words in that viral interview sounded like the script of a man determined to play the misunderstood hero. He insisted he was unbothered, claiming happiness, balance, and even a kind of independence that he likened to the spirit of Ukraine itself. The irony, of course, was impossible to ignore because nothing screams, "I am unbothered," louder than sitting for another high-profile interview to explain once again just how unbothered you really are. Critics couldn't resist poking holes in the act. If Harry were truly at peace, why the constant need to defend himself, to narrate his every feeling, to broadcast his supposed serenity to a global audience? It reeked of humble brag, an attempt to sell calm confidence while exposing nerves raw enough to bleed on camera. It's the oldest paradox of celebrity culture. Those who insist they don't care are usually the ones who care the most. And then came the familiar enemy, the British tabloids. Harry painted them once more as the central villains, the rot at the core of his misery, the great machinery that had to be dismantled for society to heal. He spoke of lawsuits as if they were crusades of headlines, as if they were bullets of reforming the press, as though it were his destiny. The rhetoric was fiery, but the logic was slippery. After all, each time he claims to escape the tabloids, he ends up feeding them a fresh banquet of quotes, confessions, and controversies. One commentator captured it perfectly. Harry is like a gambler who storms out of the casino, shouting that the games are rigged only to return 5 minutes later, chips in hand ready for another spin. His adversaries in the press don't need to chase him anymore. He delivers the headlines to their doorstep wrapped in red ribbon. The tragedy, or perhaps the comedy, is that Harry seems caught in a loop of his own making. He wants freedom from the media, yet fuels it with every sentence. He declares inner peace, yet bristles at every slight. He blames the spotlight, yet positions himself squarely in its beam. The result is not liberation, but repetition, a cycle that spins faster each time he swears he has escaped it. A storm was already forming in the distance. If Harry's interviews and trips hinted at tension, his relentless defense of spare turned the sky black. He described the memoir not as gossip or vengeance, but as the only way to tell the truth. To him, the book was a cleansing ritual, the purest act of honesty. To the palace, however, it was a dagger dipped in poison, delivered in hardcover form, wrapped neatly for the Christmas market. Each chapter carved open private wounds. William portrayed as volatile, Camilla painted as scheming, the entire institution reduced to a theater of cruelty. Harry doubled down, insisting that without spare, no one would have understood his struggle. But what he saw as a diary of liberation, others saw as artillery pages turned into bullets, each sentence firing at the heart of royal reputation. Courtiers whispered that the damage wasn't just reputational, it was emotional. Behind the curtains of Buckingham and Clarence House, the book was felt as a series of punches to the gut wounds that no carefully worded reconciliation statement could ever heal. And then came the line that chilled the room. Harry spoke of precious time with the king. What might have been meant as a tender reminder landed with the weight of an obituary. In a climate where Charles's illness hovers like an unspoken shadow, the implication was brutal. Was Harry hinting that his father's time was shorter than admitted? Was this a slip, a warning, or another weapon disguised as concern? The palace interpreted it as nothing less than a curse uttered in public, a son casually spelling out the fragility of his father's life for the world to consume. The irony was suffocating. Harry claimed to want healing, yet his every declaration felt like a scalpel cutting deeper. He spoke of truth while ensuring the scars of betrayal remained permanent. He talked of reconciliation while stacking obstacles higher with each word. One royal aide captured the sentiment bluntly. Every time we open the door a crack, he slams it shut with another soundbite. In that moment, the illusion of truce dissolved. The storm that had been gathering finally broke. The memoir, the interviews, the timing, the insinuations, they all merged into a single downpour, drenching the monarchy in tension it could no longer disguise. This is the moment when everyone must hold their breath. Whatever flicker of hope remained after Harry's brief meeting with Charles has now been extinguished by the firestorm of his latest words. What could have been the beginning of cautious reconciliation collapsed into a final act of estrangement. Instead of walking back his criticism, Harry escalated, and in doing so, he cemented a reputation not as the wounded son seeking peace, but as the permanent disruptor of the crown. The contradiction is glaring. He says he longs for healing, but each sentence is another landmine. He speaks of reconciliation, but his lips drip with barbed accusations. The palace, once tempted to believe in fragile progress, has resigned itself to the pattern. Every time Harry appears to extend an olive branch, he conceals a grenade beneath it. Courtiers no longer ask if he will strike again, they ask only when. And then there's the matter of optics, that unforgiving battlefield where Harry always seems to stumble. He lectures on responsibility and climate, yet boards private jets with a nonchalance that tabloids lap up like champagne. He condemns the monarchy for exploiting its own image, even as he signs multi-million-dollar deals retelling the very family traumas he claims he wants to move past. It is the paradox of Prince Harry, a man who despises the machine while feeding it with fresh fuel at every turn. The result is a portrait painted in contradictions. To his supporters, he is principled, misunderstood, a whistleblower of royal dysfunction. To his critics, he is a performer, profiting from the cracks in his own bloodline, a man who sells wounds as currency. And in the court of public perception, both images swirl together, leaving the sense that Harry himself may not know which role he is truly playing. Perhaps the most devastating blow of this new interview is strategic, not sentimental. Any lingering dream of reconciliation, especially while the king fights for his health, has been shattered. Palace insiders describe the comments as a punch to the stomach, the final nail in the coffin of rapprochement. Harry has willingly or not transformed himself into the emblem of chaos, the unpredictable element that ensures the Windsors will never find calm waters. The metaphor is hard to resist. The monarchy is an old house creaking and fragile, its walls stained by history. And Harry is both the man ringing the alarm bell and the one striking the match. In burning the bridge, he has also lit up the entire skyline, ensuring the feud between son and crown will not quietly fade, but remain etched into legend. Harry versus the crown, a saga without end.